BBC News. President Trump has demanded that a vote be held on healthcare reforms to replace those of the Obama administration, even though it's unclear whether they have enough support to be passed. After a day of intense negotiations in Washington failed to produce a clear outcome, a vote is expected to take place on Friday. With the latest from Washington, Laura Bicker.
President Trump has issued an ultimatum to his fellow Republicans. Either vote on the bill to repeal and replace Barack Obama's signature healthcare law, or he says he'll leave it in place and move on. This strategy will force the hand of many conservatives who've been trying to get rid of the law for 8 years. The problem is Republicans can't find a compromise. The current reforms go too far for some and not far enough for others. It looks like the vote will go ahead, but the outcome is far from assured.
More details have emerged about the man who killed 3 civilians and a police officer in an attack in London on Wednesday. Police had identified him as 52-year-old Khalid Massoud, but it's now thought he was born under a different name. Danny Shaw reports.
When Scotland Yard revealed Khalid Massoud's identity, it said he'd used a number of different aliases. The force also said Massoud was not believed to be his name when he was born in Kent on Christmas Day in 1964. It's understood his name was in fact Adrian Elms. It raises the possibility that he changed it after converting to Islam. Although there's no official confirmation of that, it could help investigators understand the path he took before carrying out the attack. 8 people remain in custody.
At least 17 prisoners are on the run after escaping from a jail in northern Mexico through a 40-metre-long tunnel. A further 12 have been recaptured. A state security spokesman said the tunnel had been dug in the back of the prison. During the escape in the state of Tamaulipas, the inmates killed a passing motorist to steal his car. A journalist has been shot dead in the Mexican state of Chihuahua, the third to be killed in the country this month. Miroslava Breach was shot in her car outside her home in Chihuahua City. More details from Nicholas Rocha.
She worked for 2 newspapers, La Jornada, which is a national paper, and she was the correspondent in Chihuahua, and for a local paper, Norte de Juarez, which is a regional newspaper from the city of Juarez, which is also in Chihuahua, where she lived and where she died. Now, Chihuahua borders the American state of Texas, and traditionally it's been really dangerous because it's a drug trafficking route to take basically drugs to the US. She's the 3rd journalist to be killed this month, not all in Chihuahua, but all 3 had in common that they reported mostly on organized crime and corruption.
World News from the BBC. One of the leading candidates in the French presidential election, the centrist Emmanuel Macron, has won the backing of a senior member of the socialist government. The defence minister, Jean-Yves Le Drian, is expected to make his support public in a newspaper interview on Friday. The man who led Hillary Clinton's campaign for the presidency last year has told the BBC he's certain that Russia interfered in the election process. John Podesta said he expected Moscow to do the same in the upcoming French and German elections. In the interview, Mr. Podesta criticised the FBI, which said nothing until recently about its investigation into possible ties between Russia and the Trump campaign. British scientists say they've made a major breakthrough in speeding up the diagnosis of tuberculosis. Using genome sequencing, they were able to identify the DNA of individual samples of the lung disease in little more than a week. Phil Mackey reports.
Cases of TB in the UK have begun falling again after a steady rise from the 1980s until the start of this decade, but England still has one of the highest rates in Western Europe. The problem's been exacerbated by the rise in drug-resistant strains, which means patients often have to wait months to get the right treatment. Scientists in Oxford and Birmingham have been able to use genome sequencing to identify the DNA of individual samples in little more than a week. A speedy diagnosis means patients can begin their recovery much quicker and also reduces the chances of the infection being spread.
Russia's Channel 1 television station has rejected an offer from the organisers of the annual Eurovision Song Contest to allow the Russian contestant to perform in Ukraine by live satellite link. Ukraine has refused to issue Yulia Samoylova a visa to attend this year's competition because of what it described as an illegal visit to Crimea, the Ukrainian peninsula seized by Russia 3 years ago. BBC News.